We'll make our way through this chapter in a moment, but I want us to be reading it as we are going along because it's fairly lengthy. And we need to observe, first of all, that women are spoken about in the book of Proverbs from time to time. First of all, we know that when the Bible in chapter 4 and so on speaks about wisdom, calling us to listen to its appeal, it's urging us to be a people that would be wise. That wisdom is characterized as a female. It's a female voice that is winsomely trying to call us to go away from folly so that we might be wise. But in between, there are two women, and I'm putting it in quotation marks there, that we are warned about. The first is the prostitute. And again and again, because the book of Proverbs is primarily written to young adults, people that are still laying the foundation for their future lives, it is one area that they are being warned about, that there will be sexually loose women that will destroy you, and therefore be careful about that. And then there is a second kind of woman that is mentioned here and there, and it is a quarrelsome wife. So by this point, it's a little too late. She's your wife. She's in your home, and so you don't have much of a choice except to sleep on the roof. And in those days, most of the roofs were flat, and so it's not so much the kind of roofs like this one, because if you try to sleep on this, you will fall to the ground. But they were the normal flat types of roofs, and so because the man is tired of a quarrelsome wife, he makes his way, takes a few blankets, and sleeps on top. So, you begin to think that perhaps the author, or at least the compiler of the book of Proverbs, is biased against women. And so, he gives you a final surprise. As the book is ending, he again brings woman to the fore, and wow, what an excellent woman she is. In fact, as he says in verse 10, she's extremely rare. Look at the way he puts it there. Proverbs 31 and verse 10. An excellent wife, who can find? In other words, yes, here and there she is found, but extremely rare. And so he says she's far more precious than jewels, or in this particular case, rare, precious stones. And I think we know that's what makes what we refer to as precious stones, that's what makes them so expensive. It's because you can't just walk out there and pick them on the ground. No, they are exceptionally rare. And the husband is brought into the picture immediately, and we are told that the heart of her husband trusts in her. In other words, he has full confidence in this woman. In all areas, he will have no lack of gain. We are told there, she does him good, not harm, all the days of her life. It's not today and tomorrow, and then she's in a bad mood for the rest of the year. No. Every day of her life, he benefits from her being in his life. Now, as we know from the book of Genesis, and specifically chapter 2, that a wife is given as a suitable helper. A suitable helper, not as a competitor, not as somebody who's pulling in this direction while the husband is pulling in another direction. And not one who comes in an egalitarian way. And that's a big phrase, simply suggesting that here are two people who are coming together literally at the same level, and each one wanting to fulfill their own calling in life. But in this particular case, it is a woman that comes in a complementarian way. In other words, the man is the one who's been given the work. The woman comes in as his assistant to help him to fulfill that God-given role. And so he is able to say, she does me good and not harm all the days of her life. Now, there's no doubt he also does the same for her. He does her good. As the New Testament would put it, he loves her, and he loves her sacrificially. The author of this part of the book of Proverbs, compiled obviously by Solomon later on, centers a lot more on her industrial activities. Her industrial activities. And as we shall notice later on, her industrial activities are with one aspect in mind, and that is to benefit her home, to benefit her husband and her children. But nonetheless, he centers on those industrial activities. Quickly, verse 13 to verse 19, which is the biggest section of this part to do with her. And notice, I'll read the whole of it, verse 13 to 19, specifically bringing out just how she labored in industry in order to be profitable, to bring in some hard-earned money. Verse 13, she seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. Now, this is not suggesting that she is a ship, but the emphasis is to do with trading. Trading. What would normally happen with ships of merchants is that they would go maybe to the Middle East and see what it is that is produced there. They take what is produced there and cross over perhaps to India, where there would be a lot of spices and so on, and offload what they have, sell in order to get the spices, and then move over again to the Middle East and again sell. And as they are moving that way, it is profit that they are gaining in between. Okay, so it's in that sense that she is likened there. And what is she doing? In her case, she is bringing to her home food, or basically supplies. Notice, to her home. She brings her food, and so on. Verse 15 tells us that she rises early, and later on in verse 18, we will notice that she sleeps late. Let's begin with the rising early. She rises while it is yet night, and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. Now, the point there is quite clear. We will see that she has children, but she has more than children. She has a lot of other individuals that make up her household. And the ones that are mentioned here are in terms of maidens. In other words, today we use the word maids, but that might also be talking in terms of different servants as well. And that's because, when you get married, it's just you and your husband. Then you begin to have children. And in the process home becomes like a center of industry. And so you employ this, you employ that, and so on. And in the process, that becomes your the center of economic activity. Not just for you as an immediate household, but indeed for your community, for your society, for your city, for your nation, and so forth. It is the heart of it all. It is the center. And because he is a helper suitable for her husband, she's making sure that that household is well supplied. Verse 16 speaks about her having a good brain tucked away on top of her shoulders. And so she considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. And the point that is being made there is that she's been trained to think about plus and minus, finally producing a plus. So she is spending money, but she's not just spending money so that she can look good and nice and so on. But she's spending money with an eye to the future. To the future. She's saying, if I put my money here, or our money, because it's money for her family, yes, today it will be seen as a cost. But you see, if I then put in a vineyard, which is going to produce grapes in due season, and then we sell those grapes this year and next year and the years to come, in 10 years, wow, look at what we will have. And so she has a good brain, the kind of brain that we try to produce at SCU. Yes, to teach you to think logically, to think long term, to think profitably. And so she plants a vineyard. But then there is the aspect of hard work. Look at this, verse 17. She dresses herself with strength. She makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. We've already talked about that. But notice, her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. So, verse 13 talks about the wool and the flax she's buying. Verse 19 is telling us that she's not just sitting there and saying to her maids, hey, you do this. Come on, hold this and make sure you're producing that. But she herself is sweating at the work. And one of the things we try to teach you at SCU is that labor is not bad. Sweat is part of life. We worship God with our hands 6 days a week. And then on the 7th, we bring the produce of our hands to the Lord and worship him with our mouths. So we must never think that cleaning toilets is only for maids. No. We must never think that landscaping is one that we don't touch. We just put our hands around our waists and issue commands to other people. No. We must be seen to be toiling there as well. Not just the men, but in this particular case, it's a woman. Eh? It's a who? Aha! And you can't do that when your nails are this long. Those nails where you can't even type properly on a keyboard. Let's quickly go on. So we've been told about her industry. Now I want to see, what does she do with that money that is coming in as she's toiling in this way? What does she do? Well, first of all, it's generosity. Verse 20, she opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. But also remember, she's doing this for her family. For her family. And so there we are. She's not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. Now remember, the word household and family are not co-equal. The word household includes the workers. It includes the servants, the maids, and so on. All who are working for her in this family industry. And what we are being told is that they are clothed in scarlet. In other words, it's the kind of dressing that today would be referring to dressed in a suit. It's the kind of dressing where you go, wow! Now, anybody who dresses like that, well, hopefully, the fridge is not empty. Otherwise, that's really being unwise. To be dressed like that, then at home, the fridge is empty. And in fact, even a stove is just that spiral part of a stove connected with two wires into the wall. No. If you're dressed like that, someone who comes to your home should not be surprised that the home is well supplied. That's the point that is being mentioned here. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing, notice again, is fine linen and purple. Now in those days, to get the purple color, you had to go into the sea and find an appropriate shell that has purple dye hidden inside it. So purple was very, very expensive. And that's what her clothing is like. Finally, we touch on the husband briefly here, but we'll leave him again until the end. And here we are told is that husband is known at the gates where he sits among the elders of the land. That is his current preoccupation. He is among the leaders of the land. And at the gate is where they used to sit to pass judgment. That's where the cases were being heard. And he is able to concentrate there because his partner, his helper, suitable, is busy taking care of the needs in the home, in the family, in the household. So we come back to her, and here's what we read. She makes linen garments and sells them. Again, we've already touched on that. And delivers sashes to the merchant. Again, it's the trading part and bringing in profit. Strength and dignity are her clothing. We've already seen that. And the confidence is repeated. And she laughs at the time to come. She's not there wondering what will happen to us in the future. What will happen? No. She has it taken care of. She's got a good brain. She has been participating in ensuring that this is taken care of. Strength, we are told, is hers. Dignity is hers. And then she teaches others. She's a role model, and she shares something of her wisdom with others. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her lips. Finally, this is a summary. We've been told what she's doing with her money. She's taking care of the present. She takes care of the future in such a way that when she sees the future threatening, she laughs. You don't know me. I have been working not just for the present, but for the future as well. But here is how she has arrived at that. The good summary, verse 27. She looks well to the ways of her household. Okay? So, everything. She's ensured the various aspects of the household. Remember, beyond the family, household. And she doesn't eat the bread of idleness. She's hard working. Finally. So we've seen her industry. We've seen where the profits are going. Finally. What's the opinion of those who are around her? Let's begin with the children. What are the children saying about her? Here it is. Her children rise up and say, "You are truly a blessed woman." Wow. God has imbued you with wisdom, with such capacity. It's the children praising. You can't blame them. They're living like kings and queens in their home. But her husband also speaks, and it is his speech that takes the longest part here. This is what he says. Many women have done excellently. He's praising her. But you surpass them all. And here's the commentary. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. That's not saying charm is not important. At least we teach you here about beauty. Eh? Okay. So it's not saying dragging it in the mud. No, but what he is saying is this. There's something better than charm and beauty. Something better. And that's what initially I said is should be the title here. And it is this. But a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. What has motivated this woman to do what she's doing? It's not money. She's not just wanting a fat bank account. It is that she wants to worship God. She knows that God has given her a responsibility as a wife, as a mother, to take care of her home in every way. And she is bent on ensuring that her home is a place where her children and her husband can smile every day because of the woman that has been given to her. To them rather. Verse 31. Give her the fruit of her hands, which is not just the profits, but the praises. The praises. And let her works praise her in the gates. And the gates, that's where the husband is. When the men of the city are mingling with her husband, they should be saying, "Abaupavuino." Eh? Those who've married well. That's what they'll be saying as they are seeing this man. He's married well. Well, I've taken 25 minutes. Let me quickly conclude. And it is this. That this book is therefore ending on a note where we are not saying that, beware of women. Beware of women because of the way they've been presented in between. But rather, this ending is saying, seek women who fear the Lord. Guys? Are you listening to me? Or are you listening to Solomon? Okay. Seek women who who fear the Lord. But number two, it is also saying, women, be those who fear the Lord. Huh? Be those who fear the Lord. And this will be seen not after you marry, but now, by your priorities, by your industry, now, as an act of worship to your God. Seek Him. But more than that, it is the fact that Christ, from New Testament eyes, is able to give us such priorities. Christ is able to stop us from being not just foolish, I'm using another word here, silly. Because He enables us to see life as it truly is and to seek to worship God every day. So if you're somebody who's listening to this and you are saying, we're sure, I'm saying, go to Christ. Male or female, go to Christ. And trust me, He will do this for you. Amen? Thank you very much.